Welcome back to Unplug with Mel. I'm your host, Mel Mosier, and I hope you got a chance to check out last episode with Miss Rachel Kukulis. She's absolutely incredible. On this episode, we have General Manager of Easy Rider, also known as Midland Odessa Urban Transit District, the one and only Doug Provance. How do I know him? Well, he just happens to be my boss. I thank him in advance for joining us today, and I hope you get to listen in and hear his journey as well as his wisdom. You can hear us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and you can catch us on LinkedIn if you would like to join our podcast and come on and tell your story to inspire infinite growth. I hope you enjoy this episode. Today, our guest is Douglas Provance, who is the General Manager of Easy Rider. It's just let you tell your story in a summary of who you are, where you're from, and how you get to General Manager of Public Transportation.
Well, I didn't ever intend to be in an office job when I was growing up and even got out of high school. I went through building trades and spent a lot of time working in oil field and with my hands and manufacturing, machine work, things like that. And as I got older, I realized that there were no to me, elderly employees at that time. Anybody over 40, 45 usually was missing fingers, had injuries, and they were quickly out of the oil field, and just wasn't any old guys out there. So I looked around and went, I've got to have a plan for the future. By then I had kids, a wife, house, a mortgage. And so what I wanted to do was find something that I could support my family and have a job for the future. Mm-hmm. And I was working for a CPA at the time, and he recommended I take a course that he was an adjunct professor at the local junior college. Mm-hmm. So I took his course, and he, of course, being a CPA, he wanted me to go into accounting. That's all they think about. So I started taking accounting courses, got an accounting degree, spent about 20 years bouncing around doing accounting work for different organizations. And one of the things I was always interested in doing was governmental and not-for-profit accounting. So I had a headhunter that had always worked with me, and she called me one day and said, hey, there's a job at the local transit agency. They need someone to do their financial work for them. And so I came to Easy Rider, Midland Odessa Urban Transit District, and took that job and was here 3 years, and the general manager position came open, and the company that is the parent company came to me and said, would you like to be the general manager? And I was a little reluctant to take it, but I did, and it's been a good experience.
So it wasn't on your radar for the beginning steps. You were going to stay in finance.
I had no intention to do that. I like books. I like keeping the numbers and analyzing the data. And that's where my focus was, and the things that I like to do were in that. So probably a little bit of an ill fit for general manager, but it kind of worked out.
Because you're a native Odessa.
Oh yeah, I was born and raised here. Went to school. All my schooling was from local schools and colleges. Well, the general managers were coming in here from other parts of the country, and this is really rather a small transit agency, and most of them had the ambitions of being places like Dallas, Houston, Austin, Atlanta. Big transit agencies is what their ambitions were. So this was just a stepping stone for them. They were coming in here the management company say, you stay there 3 years, we'll promote you to a bigger, better, faster place.
To get them here.
Okay. And so I saw that, and I was, since I'm from here and Midland, Odessa focused, I thought the local area deserved, I hate to say better because I can't say that I was better, but someone that was focused on improving Midland, Odessa, not just worried about where am I going to go next and how can I do things to get myself somewhere else.
Yeah, you have great pride in Odessa and the community and the colleges here, and I think that you've done really well.
I recommend them to everybody.
With your incredible journey from where you started in your youth, I guess youth is in our younger 20s.
Yeah, when I was a kid.
We're still kind of young in our 20s until now. On a sidetrack, you have been married for 43 years. You have 2 daughters, and you do a lot of, I guess I would say, community through board member. You know, you're part of boards. You're actively invested in everything that would help public transportation in our cities, correct?
Yeah, not just public transportation, but I've always had an interest in helping the community grow in any way I could. And was younger and less experienced, you know, I would volunteer at things. Midland used to have a bike race every year, and it was a 25-mile bike race, and it wound all through town. If you know Midland, Odessa traffic now, you'd think that's insane, but the traffic was a lot less then. Mm-hmm. And so I would volunteer at that, and, you know, of course, they'd have volunteers at every time the race turned, and, you know, the police were involved in making sure that
so everybody was safe.
The bike lanes were separate from vehicles. Yeah. And then in Odessa, they had the Keep Odessa Beautiful program, and I'd go out when they would have those and pick up trash and just various things like that. Any little thing, you know, when you're in your 20s, they're not going to put you in charge of anything for the most part, but you can go out and contribute time and labor when you're that age, and it just kind of builds from there. Once you have kids, everybody that's got kids that have gone through elementary, middle school, and high school knows you're volunteering for all sorts of things. There's PTAs, there's booster clubs, there's trips that need sponsors. There's all sorts of things that you volunteer for, and if you don't do it, your kids will volunteer. You know, I don't know how many times they came home and said, "Hey, Dad, you're now the finance guy at the swim team booster club," and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll find time."
I'm with you there. I'm in that now. What I want to acknowledge is your notable achievements. Do you feel that those getting in the mix of things has helped you go into leadership and management?
Oh, of course. I mean, you really don't go into those things thinking I'm going to learn management skills from this. It's kind of like you observe and you absorb them as you go along. And, you know, I use things today that if I sat and thought back, I'd go, ooh, I learned that at this organization, but I really wasn't in the position to do that. I just observed it.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. Well, it's evident in your journey that you have learned quite a bit. And in that, I would like to go over a part of your journey where you received kind of like a setback, where you knew that you see it as the failure, or now looking back, it wasn't a failure, it launched you into success.
There are always several points in your career. I think a lot of people think when they first start out that their career is going to be a smooth arc. They know what their path's going to be. They're going to be in this industry or this type of job for the rest of their career until they retire. And you don't realize there are going to be cliffs that you drop off of, and it's suddenly you're changing directions. You're changing what you're going to do for at least the near future and probably permanently after that. The big one that affected me, there were multiple, but the biggest early one was the oil field bust of 1985, and I'm old enough that affected me greatly. I was actually owned a business in Midland, and all of a sudden the bottom dropped out.
Yeah.
And then when they closed down the First National Bank of Midland, the bottom dropped out, and people went into blind panic. And so the business rocked along. It did okay for a few years, but it was never going to be the same, or it didn't appear to me at the time that it was ever going to be the same.
Yeah, hindsight.
Yep. So, I sold the business, went back to work for an oil field company, and thought, well, okay, this is different. But the funny thing is, the CPA I talked about earlier, that was the company he was working for. So even though there was a big drop and I was suddenly in a new field doing different things, it led to something else that was better.
Yeah. So in that circle, community connection, networking allowed you to make that decision you needed to make, and then you landed on your feet. But you weren't really thinking that's where you were going to be.
Oh no, you're always shocked when those sudden changes happen, and it takes a little while to realize it'll be okay. I'll plan and I'll focus on these items, and I'll be fine. I just have to stay focused and make my plan work.
And that's usually with the step by step, one foot in front of the other type of thing, because you're not going to see the full picture.
No, you don't, and it's kind of funny how it usually works out. It usually works out for the best because it fits your skills and your knowledge, and you don't start off realizing which pieces of your skills that you've picked up in your knowledge and your training that all of a sudden are going to come into play.
Yes, I agree with that. There's another part of your journey that I am going to volunteer it because I think it needs to be known. You're an advocate of adults going back to college, and you did it yourself. And so now you're leading that development mindset where if someone reaches out and says, I want to go back to school, you're like one of the best cheerleaders that could be for it. Tell about your journey in that and what made you decide to go back into the classroom, and what you were going for, and what did you learn in that?
When you have those sudden drops that we talked about, you sometimes need to change your skill set. And one of the fastest ways to do that, especially once you get out of your 20s and your 30s, men in particular, and it's kind of sexist sounding, it probably is, but men usually have a choice of education or trades. So men go into electrical trades or building trades or plumbing or whatever. But once you get out of your 20s and into your mid 30s, trades are harder. They won't accept you in most of them because they're looking for young guys that can take that training period and do the hard work it takes. By the time you get into your late 30s or 40s, they're expecting those guys to be running the businesses that use the trades, not doing the trades themselves.
Becoming into more of the office management, not field management.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you're in mid 30s and to mid 40s or even older, your choice is really it's education. You need to focus and concentrate, and a lot of people don't want to do it because they think they're too old. They won't get all the effort and the money you have to put in to get an education. Will you get your money back out of it? And the answer is absolutely yes. It will pay for itself time and time again to go back and retrain yourself and get to that next level that you need to be at to be able to move into a management job or even into just a skill position, say IT or anything else in a company, safety, things like that.
I think that's good to recognize when you mentioned the men versus women thing too, because if you're good at something, but you've got a hobby or a passion, but you've been doing the field trade for so long and you feel like, oh, I really want to change something. I want to do something different. I'm no longer satisfied in this. And it's okay to say, okay, I want to change. I want to go back to school. I want to get better at whether it's computers, because that wasn't necessarily even there in 1985.
No, definitely not.
And of course it's advanced since then. But then at the top of things too, when we make that decision, we're still choosing the rest of our lives. We didn't stop it. Oh, you could still work the trade job, or if you're a lower entry level job in the office, and still go to school now because there's so much more available than there was. It's mostly all online. And it's just really taking that leap of faith and saying, I need something more. I'm no longer satisfied where I was. And it's okay. I mean, go home and talk to your family and, realize it's my journey for my career and where it's going. And you graduated at 40, was it 40?
It was 40.
Yeah, and so I'm not going to say how much longer that's been.
A long time.
But it's paid off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I and speaking to that, you don't realize when you start back on education and say you go into the business management course, and there's several different things you can do. You can do finance, you can do accounting, you can do an MBA course. It's important, the things you learn at the university. But I think there's just something a little bit more important there that you don't realize till after, and that is it's what you learn, but it's the things that they teach you to focus your mind and to plan.
Time
are
management.
The two most important things you learn going through an education course of study. Is they train you to focus your mind, and once you've got that ability to focus your mind, a lot of other things open up for you. And I think that's it explains a lot, because you see a lot of people come out of university and they're very successful, and they go on and they build a career. They're able to provide for their family and even more. But people wonder sometimes, well, how do people without an education get so successful? Because we all know someone who became
we do.
incredibly successful, and they never went to a day of college. They were just very successful people. And I think they were, I can't say they were born with it, but they had the ability to train and focus their mind on their own. And a lot of us, and I'm one of them, I needed the help. I needed the education process to help me learn to focus and learn to plan out farther than, just a few weeks or months, but years. But the successful people that get through life without a college education, they already have that ability. Now, whether they just picked it up on their own or they were born with it, I couldn't say. But
they really honed into what they knew they would be good at.
That separates them, and I've known several of them that were hugely successful.
I mean, I thought I was a pretty good planner, being a single mom and doing a career and trying to do it. But adding college back into my life, I mean, your calendar is set. When you're studying, when you're going to bed, did you take a snack? I put snack breaks into my schedule.
You have to.
And I'm
and you have small children, so you have to make time for them.
Yep.
The thing is, after you've done that for 4 or 5 years, it's so ingrained in you.
More accomplishes.
It's becomes so much a part of your life that you just continue it, even though you're no longer in college.
Oh no, everything's still good. I love my planner.
You have to set that compartmentalization out, and I've got to do the work piece. I've got to do the home piece. I've got to do the volunteer piece. And
the chore piece.
The chore piece. Oh yeah,
all of it.
Definitely.
Even the bill piece. Like I have it where I need to make sure my bills are being paid, the chores need to be done. And
it's not quite as rigid after that, but it's still there.
We're gonna move into more of some things that you have found evident in your career and your personal life too, of passions and personal experiences that have played a vital role in shaping your leadership style.
The thing about your leadership is you have to learn, you don't get everything your own way. When you're younger, you think all I've got to do is go in there and tell everybody what to do and it'll be done.
You should try parenting.
Yeah, parenting will break you of that too, but it's the same thing. You've got however big your staff is, you have that many different personalities and that many different styles of how they get things done. Some will be procrastinators and they'll get things done at the last second, and you can't panic and you can't go in and constantly tell them, get on this, do this now. It's not going to work. It won't work for them. Others are just the opposite, and they'll, as soon as you give them something, they launch into it and they're on it as hard and fast as they can do that. They get it done, and everybody else is in between somewhere in that scale.
Yeah.
So you learn to be a little more relaxed, or you will basically drive yourself crazy trying to.
There's a balance there.
Trying to keep your thumb down on everybody and say, get this my way, or well, the higher up in your organization you are, the more it's just about people management. You can't, when you're lower down, you get a certain block of work that's yours, and you can control that and do everything about it, start to finish. That's yours.
You can control you, yeah.
But as your team grows and you move up, that's a bit like herding cats. You'll never get it done. You have to adapt, and you just learn who to keep an eye on and when to check and when not to interfere and who to trust.
Yeah, I agree.
And you have to have develop a kind of a perception, and it has to do with their facial expression and their body language and what they're repeating back to you, and you have to pay attention to that more than you did
previously,
because that tells you where you're at in communicating with them.
We're hiring millennials and the younger generation coming out of college, what we call emerging leaders, because we believe in them, but they're coming out with all different. They've been in the digital world, they've been in the computer world, so their ways of processing data and information is completely different. How I learned it by textbook and notes, and for you it was probably different, and so acknowledging
stone tablets.
No, that's a good one. But it's just amazing to see when we do hire and the personality and the dynamic changes. We have to, as leaders, evolve to that too. If we wanted a cookie cutter person, then we would all be hiring the same type of person.
Well,
even in leadership,
I think the people coming in have changed some, true, but as management, we've changed a lot. The desktop computer age that we're in, and the fact that people have computers and tablets and the equipment at home allows us to have more flexibility. I think you've got to be in the office a certain number of hours, developed from the fact that especially when I started, the computers were all mainframe. You had to be in the office to get on the computer.
Sure.
Your job was on the computer.
Well, we had dial-in internet.
And then if we had internet at all. And then as the computer revolution went on, desktops came in. Every desk had a desktop, one monitor, then two monitors. And the technology got cheaper, faster, better, more connected. And that has allowed this flexibility. And we can point to the younger generation that they expect that because they were raised with it. But as management, we've seen it come too, and you have to be able to allow that to happen some. It's not a bad thing, and there's no point in resisting it and fighting it all the way, saying it's a bad thing. And you have people come in that they have children, and they have, maybe even if they're an older generation working, they have elderly parents, and they need that time to be able to work somewhere else, be able to handle their job and still get productivity hours in. And
their projects, their deadlines, time management.
Time management, again.
That's kind of the theme of it.
Single parents like yourself have it really rough. I've been married, you said 43 years, and we were always able to swap off child duties, or if we had sick children. I had being in accounting, especially once I had kids, I had certain times of the month I had to be in the office. I had to be on premises. I couldn't work from home at that time. And Robin was teaching or going to college at that time. So she would, at certain times, she would even take kids to college classes with her, and they'd either sit in the hallway coloring, or if the professor was a little more flexible, they would sit next to her in the class and sit there and listen to the lecture. I've closed the books on companies before with a sick kid on a pallet behind me. When you're in a management position in a small organization like this one, you're not only trying to keep everybody on task, the whole facility becomes something you're supposed to keep an eye on. You're responsible for maintaining, or yes, you have a maintenance staff. Yes, you have a manager over that, but still someone has to observe, check, verify, and that's the key. You trust everybody, but you still verify what they do.
And you also hold them accountable.
I don't sign checks without understanding what we're paying for.
The how and the why. You've taught me that.
I look at the payroll top to bottom, but I also have to check operations, scheduling, everything. I mean, you're responsible, and I can't spend a tremendous amount of time on any of them. You have to learn to glance at a set of numbers or glance at an operational sheet very quickly and see where the issues are and pick up, hey, what are we doing about this? And just ask the questions. The manager probably has it well in hand. Usually they're just like, oh, I've already done this and this and this. And it's like, great, wonderful. But you still have to check.
Yeah, you do. You just can't leave it all up and then let the ball drop and then you're held accountable.
Well, that's the call you don't want to take from your boss. Is, hey, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. And you not know about something. So you spend a lot of time just checking that everything's running the way it's supposed to and things are smooth.
So we just talked about your career, leadership style, the setback that you've incurred in 1985. All of this is all business related and stuff, and it's critical. This is who you are as far as management and everything. But the theme of Unplug with Mel is unplugging. So what do you do? Because that's all pressure, like that's always running through our minds. I think you and I are similar in the fact that our to-do list never really shuts off. So how do you separate work and life, and what do you do as far as unplugging?
Well, to take my mind off what I do and get a break from it, I read, and I've always done that. If I have an hour available and, I don't want to sit there and plan and focus on work or anything else, I pick up a book and I read. And I've always read a lot comparatively. I know I read probably 25 novels a year, which about one every 2 weeks. And so that's what I spend my spare time doing is reading. I garden some. I have a very nice garden in the backyard of my house.
Which is very, very difficult just for our audience to know in West Texas to accomplish.
If you're gardening in a drought area or a desert area like West Texas is, it's got its own challenges. But it's a matter of adapting. You don't have the same plants here that you would have in East Texas or in Arkansas or Missouri. You have to find things that are beautiful and grow well in our soil, with our water, and the temperatures range that we have here. And so you don't try to fight these things. You try to adapt. You try to work with what you've got. But
it goes hand in hand into management.
Right, it does.
You can't take somebody and put them in this.
You can't hammer a square peg into a round hole. You've got to work with what you've got.
Yeah.
And so it's a reoccurring theme.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just life. That's the best way to put it.
The theme of life and stuff. But okay, so how would with unplugging, with reading and gardening and stuff like that, you shared a quote, and I would love why it resonated with you, and it was something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing here, that from Groucho Marx, was that his group?
It's been the credit to him, Mark Twain, and a couple of others.
And it was like, I don't want to be a part. If you'll accept me in your team or I don't want to be a part of it.
I wouldn't belong to any club that would have me as a member.
There it is.
And I don't know, it's kind of tongue in cheek, but it really one of the things I've never understood is gang culture. Even things that aren't gang culture, like the Elks Club or the Moose Lodge or things like that, which was my parents' generation.
Yeah.
Some of those clubs are still around, but they've kind of shrunk in size and no longer as relevant as they once were. But I never wanted to be a joiner. I never joined. And now I volunteer, and I've done that my whole life. But anything that was a club, my dad was a Mason. I've never joined the Masons. I've never even thought about joining the Masons, really. It's just,
So
I always had this independent streak. I wanted to be independent. I didn't want to be as part of a group that all tried to think as one unit.
I can see that.
I always thought there were too much variety, and it's even political parties. I've never really been a part of a political party because I pick and choose what I like about each one. And then when I vote, I try to pick the candidate that I think is the best for the role they're trying to get into, whether it be county commissioner or president of the United States. I try to vote for the one that I think will do the best job, not the one that particularly fits my party's definition of what a candidate should be. So it makes it where I lose a lot of elections, but
I can see the tongue in cheek in that. And when I read up on it, because I had heard it, but I hadn't understood, and I love to know the how and the why of things. That's how my brain works, and I've learned that over time that's how my brain works. So when I read up on it, and it did give credit to Mark Twain and all that, so I took it as if when you join a group, they have to accept you, and they can reject you if you're not a certain type, a certain boys club, girls club, or whatever. But when we volunteer, because I have a heart for volunteering as well, they accept you and what your talents that you're good at, and
what you can contribute,
what you can contribute, even on the time, what time you're available, or what. But when you're joining, there's like requirements and commitments and memberships, and I'm sitting there going, I can see, why to be set apart, to be an individual, but still have the heart to volunteer. That's how I took it, the differences of it. Because when I first read it, I was like, but you are part of groups and stuff. And then
you always are part of groups.
But then I realized it's I could see how
but groups expect you to conform to their philosophy, their way of thinking,
their viewpoint, their vision, their mission, and if it doesn't align with them, you're out.
Right.
And then you got rejection issues all over again, because I couldn't be what they wanted me to be, but I'm still me. So why couldn't you accept me?
It's also, if they knew the way I felt about things, if they would accept me, they're too strange for me to be part of that group. That's why I wouldn't join them.
I like it. I like the quote. It let me see you in a little bit of a different light with it. And we're going to wrap up here and everything. So I do thank you for your time, Doug, and I appreciate you saying yes to this project of mine. What I like to end it with is, what would you say to emerging leaders or leaderships now that are in that crossroad of what now? They're dissatisfied, or they're not finding passion in the industry that they have maybe landed in, chosen. What would you say to them to encourage them that it's okay to take it to the next level?
Have confidence in yourself. Have confidence that the decisions you'll make, and that, there are setbacks and some things don't go the way you want. But at some point you're going to look up and go, wow, this worked out pretty good. I found a nice spot. Don't be afraid of the change. If you get in a position or a job or an industry, if you're not happy within a year, make a change.
A year.
Go to something else. You've given it a good long stretch, and maybe even longer than necessary. You probably stuck it out too long.
Yeah.
But if it hasn't really made you feel appreciated and as enthusiastic about it within that period of time, it's time to, even if you stay within the same industry or whatever, change companies because something's not right. Listen to your instincts.
That mentality has shifted in times because when I grew up, it was like you need to find the career and just stick with it and stick it out because they look at your resume so critically that if you're jumping in a year or whatever. Now, eventually, a pattern of behavior is going to show where you don't last a year.
Well, you hope that your next jump is one you'll stay 5, 6, 7 years at, and people can see a pattern. Okay, you jumped here, you were here a year. Your next job, you were here a long period of time. So you're not just jumping from job to job. Why did you leave this little short job, and then why did you stick at this one you had a longer stretch? And it's usually culture. It has to do with it just didn't feel right there. It wasn't me. But the next one I really enjoyed because of X, and you're able to tell your future employers that.
When I review resumes of the younger generation, and if they're doing the year to 2 years here, I give them kudos for that. Now in the 30s to 40 range, you should see a little bit of longevity.
A little bit.
But if not, then in interviewing, we ask, why the movement? And sometimes I haven't found where I belong yet.
Well, and I don't believe, there are people, and I know them, and everybody does, that people work 30, 40 years in one company doing one job. I can't think of anything more boring. It's like, wow, to get up every morning for 40 years. And this is somebody that's been married 43 years to the same person, but to do the same job, that would be incredibly boring. There's always something new and exciting out there. And I always wanted to see something different. So you can see a pattern in my job history every few years. I think I change history.
I had a mentor tell me one time that you're equipped to the next level that you've been taught. You'll reach a certain pass at a company that's as far as you can go. And they'll stick it out, but then you become resentful and bitter. And you're like, why? Then it's a you thing. You need to go out and branch out. Go to the next thing. And that's what I've lived by. My resume from my 20s looks like she didn't know what she was.
Well, most of us in our 20s
don't. And so and I sticked in the same industry. I was oil and gas like you were. So if you are in the same industry, but you're moving around, most employers can see you're trying to find what role you have in that industry. It's more of those that went from retail to office to whatever, all their life. They haven't been able to figure it out.
They never figured it out.
And that's more.
But you've been in HR and you're getting more and more into it, and you've probably realized at some point, yes, I'm hiring to fill this role, but I'm looking for the person that can move to the next role.
That's me.
How do I get that person in the door, and they stick around long enough to learn something about the company, and we see how capable they are, and then get them into the next position. So what you said was very important. When you've been in a company 4 or 5 years and you've just kind of stuck in that same position, they've either moved you as far as they intended, or they didn't see what they wanted to move you.
Exactly.
So it's time for you to move on.
And I have reached out to my bosses and be like, I want the next step. And some have been very candid. There is no next step for you. And so then I know to go home and go back to the drawing board and going, okay, what's next, Mel?
It's time to go back and plan again. Your plan that however long you had that one for has come to an end.
Yep.
Go back and
that's how I ended back in wanting to go back to school too, because I would get to a certain level and they never wanted to increase my pay or my title. And then if I needed to go out again, they would start me there again and not here.
But a lot of companies hire that way. You have to have a certain degree, or you have to have a degree, period. And it's not that, there's a lot of English majors out there in the oil field. It's not that they want English majors out there running crews and things. It's like we talked about earlier. They want that person that's been through that process and can focus their mind and plan.
It's just not the piece of paper of the diploma.
Exactly.
It's what you've learned in that experience of time management, prioritizing, compartmentalizing, and how bad did you want to graduate, really? Getting it done.
How determined were you?
How determined to do it. Well, I appreciate your time. You guys can follow us on YouTube, and you're also going to be, if you're like me, driving down the road, we'll be on Apple and Spotify. Thanks for joining with Unplug with Mel. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.